Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to another episode of A to Z Sports Live. I'm your host, Tyler Fornes, and we are here covering your Minnesota Vikings full time. This is a really interesting time for the Minnesota Vikings because they are in quite a, what do you call it? A predicament, I guess, is probably the best way to frame it. We know that Jordan Addison had himself arrested on Monday, and the charges were simple. It was a singular trespassing charge when he was removed from the Seminole Hard Rock Hotel and Casino and was booked at 3:40. Sorry, he was arrested at 3:46 a.m. and booked at 7:33. Then subsequently released at 2:44 p.m. the same day on a $500 cash bond. Look, the overarching theme of what this isn't great. And you can take a look at it from multiple perspectives. So we'll take a look at it from this perspective. The fact that he has a third legal issue over the course of his short NFL career, which has only lasted 3 seasons, is not good. Plus, you add in the issue that he had over in London, where he was benched for the first quarter, and things are not exactly looking prime for Jordan Addison. It also raises a lot of questions about what you do with him in the future. There are fans who are just all up in the comments on this channel and my Net Vikings First and Goal, which you should subscribe to both of these right now if you haven't. Hit that notification bell for to make sure that you get notified when we go live, which is going to be between 12 and 1 p.m. every single Friday. But what do you do with him? Do you choose to sign him to an extension? Do you give him that 5th-year option? Because the talent says you absolutely should. And to be fair, it was a little bit of a down year. A lot of that had to do with injuries and the quarterback position. Quarterback was just bad this year. And you can look at it from multiple ways. J.J. McCarthy was bad. Carson Wentz was bad. Max Brosmer was worse than both of them. And on top of that, you didn't have Christian Darrisaw for a lot of the season. You didn't have Brian O'Neill for good portions of it. Ryan Kelly missed a lot of games. Donovan Jackson missed a few. Will Fries played them all, so that was nice. He missed like a total of 5 or 6 snaps throughout the entire season. But it's incredibly frustrating when you have that kind of lack of continuity. And when you're a wide receiver, continuity can make a really big impact on your stats. And Addison did not put up the best numbers. So looking at that, just from that perspective, it's like, okay, maybe we should hold off on an extension. Maybe we should wait. Maybe we should be a little bit more patient, kind of see what we have. Because his first 2 years, 19 touchdowns, average of 900 yards per season, looked great. Looked like the exact running mate you wanted with Justin Jefferson. But the off-the-field issues and a little bit of a down year this year, even though the down year necessarily wasn't all his fault, raised a lot of questions about what you do with Addison moving forward. And I challenge with this because it's not just about the off-the-field stuff, which Jose in the comments says, too much off-field drama. We don't need guys like that. Look, I can understand that. It's tough because you can look at it from the perspective Addison's either 23 or 24 years old. He's still young. He's still figuring it out. And in a vacuum, a minor trespassing charge isn't a humongous deal, whereas the 2 issues that he dealt with prior to this were much bigger. But now you're starting to see more of a pattern and more of a trend that Addison maybe isn't a guy that you can trust on a long-term basis. And to me, that's where the frustration comes in. What do you do with a player like Addison, who's insanely talented? But even with being that talented, how long are you going to be able to tolerate some of these issues? How long is it going to be for the Vikings to just say, hey, we're done, and we are going to choose to move on? Now, historically, wide receiver has been a position where you deal with a little bit more drama than you do others. Even in the Vikings history, Stephon Diggs had some issues, more of just complaining. He had got fined, $250,000 for his not showing up to practice the week after the Bears game in 2019. Randy Moss had a bunch of off-the-field issues, and he's arguably the greatest receiver of all time, and they dealt with that for quite a while. I'm not going to say that Addison's on the level of those guys. I'm not going to say that Addison is just insanely great player that's irreplaceable. Everybody's replaceable. Even Justin Jefferson is replaceable. It's just harder to replace some guys than others. The Vikings are in a very interesting conundrum from that perspective. And I'm very, very fascinated to see what Kwesi Adofo-Mensah does, because they don't have to make a decision on Addison until right after the draft when his 5th-year option comes due. Now, let's take a look at the 5th-year option price, because that in itself can be, what do you call it? That can be a deterrent, or, hey, let's do it. So right now, Jordan Addison's 5th-year option, based on, because he doesn't have a Pro Bowl, but he does have playtime incentives built in, $17,528,000. So that is a significant amount of money. But Addison's also shown that he is worth it when he plays on the field. So when I take a look at Jordan Addison, I think he's one of the better receivers in the National Football League. He plays the position at an extremely high level. He is a great complement to what Justin Jefferson brings, and paying 2 wide receivers is plausible. The Lions are doing it right now. The Eagles are doing it right now. The Bengals are doing it right now. I don't love how the Bengals structure contracts. Let me tell you, the Eagles do a great job of structuring contracts. The Lions under Brad Holmes have done a great job structuring contracts. Rob Brzezinski is among the best at structuring contracts in the National Football League. You can pay both of these guys. And from a talent perspective, I think you would be dumb to not pay Jordan Addison. But how much can you trust Jordan Addison? That is the key here. And I'm going to pull up a quote from Kwesi Adofo-Mensah here in just a second, because it's very interesting when you have the conversation about Jordan Addison, what he's going to be and what he's going to be moving forward. Because essentially, it's not just a talent thing with Addison anymore. It isn't. And this is the quote. We just found that information talking about the arrest, so I don't want to speak too deeply about it. But obviously, any decision you make with Jalen Nailor or anybody else is about the short term or long term of that room. Jordan is unique because 99% of the days that Jordan Addison is Vikings, he is a joy to be around. He's incredibly intelligent, confident, responsible. And then, like all of us, what are you like on 1% of those days? Is it the type of thing that draws attention or not? And obviously, that's something we have to consider when you're talking about long-term ramifications of a contract extension, different things like that, or letting someone like Jalen Nailor leave. And we'll have those conversations. Obviously, it's a few days after the season, and this event just happened that we have not. Always supportive of Jordan Addison. We'll continue to fact find and see what actually happened, and then we'll have those conversations in the future. So Kwesi just kind of said the quiet part out loud. What do those things look like on those 1% of days? Because that's what we're talking about with Jordan Addison. It's about the 1%. It's about the off days. What do you look like? What are things going to be? And right now, those 1% of days, they haven't been good. They haven't been good. And can you fix that? I don't know. Every human being is different. Every situation is different. That variable is going to determine whether or not he gets a contract extension. JJ makes an interesting comment here. I don't feel like the organization want to move him for this incident, but I do believe if he gets in any more trouble, he is gone. Quarterback that can get the ball consistently to Jetson J has to be as a must move, or has to be as a must, or move his ass before he does get in any more problems and his stock goes south. See, this is the interesting thing, JJ, and we're going to talk about the quarterback position here in a little bit, because that plays into a lot of the Addison discussion, because the on the field is severely impacted by those around him. And when you don't have consistency from the offensive line because of injuries, which I am not of the mindset where the Vikings need to prioritize offensive line. They have a very good offensive line. It just wasn't healthy. That's a different discussion point than they have bad players and they just need to start replacing guys. I don't think that you need to go in and try to find a Brian O'Neill replacement. He's 31 years old. He's fine. He was selected in the 2018 draft. He's not ancient. You can play right tackle until you're like 37, 38 years old, as long as you don't have this athletic cliff. Center, like Brandon Michael Jurgens, to me, are good enough to play center if Ryan Kelly moves on or chooses to retire. I don't think you need to prioritize that position either. Plus, it's not a good center class, and your best option tore his ACL in October. Not great, Bob. So when you have those kind of issues on the offensive line, which, let's be real, the offensive line wasn't even that bad this year. The quarterback play was atrocious. 30 of the 60 sacks were directly credited to the quarterbacks. Taking a look at kind of all-encompassing, quarterback's going to have a huge impact on Jordan Addison. Tyler brings up an interesting point. Package Addison and picks for A.J. Brown. I mean, I guess you could, but how much are you willing to give up from a draft capital perspective to get A.J. Brown? Are you going to be able to deal with having two alpha males without consistent quarterback play? I don't know, man. To me, that sounds more like a Madden kind of trade than it does something that would actually happen in real life, something that would actually be successful. That's why taking wide receivers is a really smart play. And before we get into quarterback, I did just release a mock draft on A2Zsports.com talking about what they could do if they choose to move on from Jordan Addison. I just did it in a broad scope. I did not actually trade Jordan Addison or use those picks in the mock because I'm not 100% sure what his stock would be. And that's part of the problem with trading him right now. What is his stock? How good actually is he from a NFL draft perspective? Can you get a first round pick for him? I thought going into the year, if you trade him, it's probably a first and a third because of the trajectory he was on. Now, can you get a second? And is that worth it? To me, the answer is flat out no. I think you got to wait. You got to wait and see it play out. And I do think his attorney and agent released a very strong statement saying that he'll be fully exonerated from this. There are levels to how agents and lawyers will end up framing things. And I think that's an important context here. You're always going to defend your client, but how strongly you defend the client with a statement is how guilty that you believe that they are. That was a very strong statement, meaning they really don't believe he did anything wrong. That's important here. That's really important to that conversation. Innocent until proven guilty, and we're going to wait and see what happens with Jordan Addison. I'm very intrigued to see how that continues to develop, but we'll get there in time. But I did release that mock draft, which I mentioned on A2Zsports.com, 7-rounder. I took Denzel Boston in the first round, and he's a different type of receiver. He's a different type of guy. He's a 6'4", 209-pound X receiver from the University of Washington. And being an X receiver, you do a lot of those A.J. Brown kind of things. Slants, digs, curls, goes, posts. You're doing a lot of the deeper contested catch kind of stuff. And he's got the frame to do it. He's got the physicality to do it. He has phenomenal ball skills. He goes and gets the ball at the top of the catch point and just traps it and does not let anybody else get to you. That is the kind of guy that we want to see. And he does so much of that. It would also be different than anything the Minnesota Vikings have had so far in their wide receiver room, because they have Justin Jefferson, they have Jordan Addison, who they may not be the exact same from a talent and output perspective. They're the same style of wide receiver. Jalen Naylor is arguably the same style of wide receiver. And having a different kind of body type could help the Vikings maximize what they can get from this offense. He's a much different player than like a Puka Nacua is for the Los Angeles Rams. Puka is a bigger guy, but he doesn't play like a traditional X. Denzel Boston plays a traditional X. And if you want a good comparison, A.J. Brown's a traditional X. Michael Irvin was a traditional X receiver. So that's the kind of player that you're going to get. And at 6'4", 209 pounds, he returned a punt for a touchdown this year. So a very intriguing type of player. But that's kind of what you're looking at if you choose to move on from Jordan Addison. There's a bevy of different Z receivers. You could take a Carnell Tate, Jordan Tyson, a Mekhi Lemon, Casey Concepcion. There are dudes out there that you can technically replace Addison with. But you'd have to be able to get the right draft capital. And to me, that's the difficult part. Couple more comments here. Jeff says, maybe you need to hire a babysitter for Addison. Look, I get it. I think Des Bryant technically had a babysitter with the Cowboys. I don't necessarily know if that's the right approach, but it's definitely one you can take. Jesse, no QB will be successful with this line unless they tighten up. I'm going to be honest. The O-line wasn't that big of a problem this year. It was not perfect, but they were only credited for 26 sacks this year, which is just over 1 per game. That's not bad. A lot of the issues that people perceive with the offensive line were strictly quarterback, where they're not navigating the pocket well. They are running right into pressure. That's not the O-line's fault. And something that we did not think about enough with Kirk Cousins is how robotic he was. And that was so good for the O-line, where if it's an 8-yard drop, he's dropping to 8 yards and not going any deeper than that. And then Christian Darrisaw can just push the edge rusher right around him at 10 yards. Well, J.J. McCarthy's drops are so inconsistent. He's dropping to 10. And guess what? Then when he starts to move, he gets sacked. One of those happened to Carson Wentz in Pittsburgh, where he drops back a little too deep. Darrisaw's trying to push around, and he starts scrambling out to his right in the path of, I believe it was TJ Watt. You can't do that. That's why when you talk about offensive line, quarterback play comes so much into it. Bad quarterback play in the pocket makes an offensive line look worse. Great quarterback play makes them look better. It goes both ways. But the offensive line was fine last year. It was fine. And especially with how many issues they had. Remember, Justin School had 14 true pass sets against Myles Garrett, allowed 1 pressure. And that pressure was, it took like 6 seconds in order for Garrett to get the pressure. And then he tackled Carson Wentz for a 1-yard gain. Look, offensive line is going to be a touchy subject to this fan base, I understand. But you can't have all pros at every position. They're fine. They are just fine. Jeff also replies, and this is where we're going to transition to the quarterback aspect of this conversation. Draft Chambliss. And he's talking about Trinidad Chambliss of Ole Miss, who has had a fantastic college football playoff, really came out of nowhere, transferred to Ole Miss from Ferris State, a D2 powerhouse, not Group of 5, not FCS, D2. And he helped Ferris State win a national championship. The idea was, he'll come to Ole Miss and he'll probably get a head start on being a grad assistant and then transition to coaching. Then Austin Simmons sprained his ankle. Trinidad Chambliss took over, and he never gave the job back. He nearly got Ole Miss to the national championship game, but Miami had the game-winning drive with Carson Beck, and now we're going to see Miami versus Indiana on Monday night. Overall, this is a very interesting idea, but I'm going to tell you, I don't see it happening. I don't see the Vikings trying to take a quarterback early on in this draft. I do think that they're going to address it outside of the NFL draft. I think they're going to address it in free agency, and I think they're going to do so in a trade. There are a lot of options. You could try trading for Kyler Murray. You could try trading for Tua, Geno Smith, Tanner McKee maybe, if the Eagles are willing to get rid of him. There's always the Mac Jones, which I really don't like. I don't like any of those options. The one option I think they're actually going to do, which is not going to be the most popular, I think they're going to trade for Anthony Richardson. Kevin O'Connell loves Richardson. He loves what he brings. We saw the embrace at midfield after the Vikings beat the Colts in 24. Because remember, Anthony Richardson got benched earlier that week. So there are some really interesting things from that perspective. Kevin O'Connell does a great job of identifying quarterback talent. Look, even though Richardson hasn't played super well, the talent is insane. His ceiling is MVP of the league. But the problem is, can you get him to being the MVP of the league? That is the overarching question. To me, I really have no idea if he's going to get him there. I don't think he will. I don't think anybody will. It's been a rough time for Richardson, but remember, he's only going to turn 25 years old, and he has all the talent in the world. He has Josh Allen talent. That's a big deal. And I'm very excited about the idea of Richardson working with Kevin O'Connell. And the one thing that can be difficult is Richardson and J.J. McCarthy are basically the same player. Now, they're the same player. Like, there's a can of Pringles and there's a can of Lay's Stacks. They're both the same type of chip, but there's differences. Richardson has this insane amount of raw ability. J.J. McCarthy doesn't quite have that, especially in terms of arm strength and arm talent. And his rushing ability isn't the same as Richardson's. They're both different types of runners, but they're both relatively inaccurate. Their mechanics are awful. They don't have a lot of experience from the college ranks. McCarthy has significantly more than Richardson, of course. And then there's the injury factor. The injury factor is rough. They both continuously get injured and they put themselves in position to get injured. That to me is the more concerning angle. And Alex makes an interesting point about McCarthy. McCarthy has the pocket feel. Richardson does too. Richardson has a great pocket feel. The problem is Richardson is not quick at making those decisions, something McCarthy isn't good at either. And when he does make the decisions, the accuracy plays really poor, but he has a good sense of what's going on in the pocket and how to navigate it. So that's not a negative on Richardson at all. Neither one of these guys has been able to prove that they are a franchise quarterback. That doesn't mean they won't be, especially with McCarthy only having 10 games. But 10 games in 2 years is rough. It's very rough. Missing 25 of a possible 35 starts. I don't like it. Let's kind of go to the comments because Chuck makes an interesting one. Those options do suck. Yeah, it's hard to find a quarterback. It really is. Jeff asks, how about Malik Willis? He's a free agent. I think Malik Willis is going to get a 3-year, $90 million contract from somebody, whether it be the Steelers, the Browns, the Dolphins, maybe the Cardinals if they move on from Kyler. There are a lot of teams who want a guy like Richardson. The Colts could even get into play. When you take a look at that, is that a smart move? Is that something that the Vikings are going to be willing to do? Do you want to commit $90 million to Malik Willis? I'm going to be honest. I would hesitate. I would seriously consider it, but that would also mean moving on from JJ McCarthy, which you're probably at most going to get a second round pick, probably less because of what he's already shown so far. It's tough to be in this position again. The one trade I would like the least is Mac Jones. I don't think he's worth giving up a second round pick for. And if you do that, you're basically saying, hey, you're the starter. That's not, if you're going to acquire a quarterback that you genuinely want to compete, you don't want to anoint them the starter by the draft capital you give up. That's just a bad signal. Tyler mentions bringing Joe Burrow. Feel like that'd be impossible though, giving up everything, but it could be a great fit. Yes, it could be a great fit, but I'll tell you this, based on everything I have heard, it won't happen this year. And even if it does happen, like I get it, but to me, that's a pipe dream. I know we talked about it with the comments with Joe Burrow a few weeks ago, where he kind of showed that he was not happy with the organization. Completely understand that, but I don't think it's going to happen. And I don't want to tell you to give up on that dream, but let's hold out. Let's hold out on really having the Burrow or Lamar Jackson conversation. And what I'm not entertaining is Justin Herbert, because there have been no signals that he wants out. There have been no signals that the Chargers want to move on from him either. Alex mentions as well that we just need a competent backup. I'm not worried about McCarthy's injuries. So the one reason why I'm worried about McCarthy's injuries is because he is making himself prone to injuries. It's not just the total amount. There are 5 documented injuries. 2 of them are blatantly his fault. The high ankle sprain, he could have just gone out of bounds, but instead he chose to slow down and try to get a couple extra yards by absorbing contact, got tackled. His fault. The concussion, lowers his head, lowers his shoulder, instead of just going out of bounds, his fault. That's making yourself prone to injuries instead of being injury prone. You have to play smarter football. And if you're not going to do that, those injuries are going to continue to mount. You're going to have more of them. And to me, 5 injuries in 2 years, even if you don't have a long history, that the new history matters a little bit more than the previous history. You are not healthy and you are not able to play. That's a problem. And even if you take off the poor on the field play, which overall was bad this year, it was bad for the Vikings. Are you really okay with the injuries? I'm certainly not. And that's going to be where the Vikings are going to have to make a decision on what they want to do. Jeff, back in the comments, one thing for certain, they need to bring someone in to challenge McCarthy rather than just anointing him as the starter because he hasn't earned that. 100% agree. They need somebody. I don't know who that somebody is yet. I hope they can find a way to get Malik Willis on a solid contract because I think he's the best option. Otherwise, it's signing a Daniel Jones coming off of a torn Achilles where he'll probably just stay in Indy, trading for Mac Jones, Tua Tagovailoa, Geno Smith, or Kyler Murray. None of those are that appealing. I think Willis has upside, especially because his first 2 years were with a Tennessee Titans organization that half of them didn't want him to begin with. And the last 2 years, he played really well in a good Green Bay Packers organization. Yes, it sucks the fact that the Green Bay Packers have a good organization, but it just is what it is. One more from Alex. I understand your point, Forno, but those are things I expect him to do better at and realistically be better at. I think it's fair to think he will be better at preventing those injuries, but that is something historically where I have to see it to believe it. And one of the best at preventing injuries, even though he gets hurt, is Lamar Jackson. Jackson does a great job of not getting hit in the open field. Remember when Jaden Daniels was coming out, we made fun of him a little bit because he just kept getting cartoonish hits in the open field. It was like Wile E. Coyote cartoons. He does a great job of in the open field finding ways to not absorb contact and going down. Most of his injuries come by being hit in the pocket. McCarthy's injuries have been when he's running in the open field and he is absorbing contact. To me, that's a problem. I hope it gets better. I understand, Alex, that you believe it will get better, and I hope you're right. But that's one of those things where I am going to have to see it to believe it. We're going to have a lot more on the quarterback stuff. We're going to have more on the Jordan Addison things because remember, he doesn't get a reign until February 3rd. So we have some time to try and learn more about the situation. But that's going to do it here today. And we're going to have a lot more of these conversations. So make sure you hit like, subscribe, and ring the bell for those notifications. As you can see on the left side, we have a lot of short form videos coming out on Facebook, TikTok, Instagram, and here on YouTube. There's going to be a lot more fun with this Vikings team coming up. We're going to do some more mock drafts. We are going to have more of a discussion on free agency, team needs, and I'll address one last because I think I missed it. Hold on. I thought there was something about the offensive line. Oh, Jesse says no QB was successful in the tighten up the O line. Yeah, I think the O line's fine. I really do. Thank you, Jeff, for saying good show today. I appreciate that. We're gonna have a lot more of these, so make sure you stay subscribed. Last thing, we'll answer this from Tyler. Do you think TJ Hawkins will be traded? No, I think it's possible, but I don't know who would want to trade for TJ Hawkins at this point. And I mean, maybe he does get traded. I don't think he's getting cut. And I think the people that believe he's going to get cut are just mad about his lack of production this year. And that lack of production, honestly, a lot of it came from injuries to the offensive line where they had him stay in to block. They had him chip. They had him do a lot of those things. And I like Hawkinson. I think he does a really good job. And I think he's a lot better than people want to give him credit for. That'll do it here today. Thank you guys so much for joining us. I'm Tyler Fornes, also known as The Real Forno, which you can find me on Twitter with that screen name. Thank you so much. Take care. Skol Vikings.